Danny Ings, best thing since sliced bread. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome
Danny Ings! Danny Ings! Woohoo!
We have gone back to the future for 2023 because that was real lifetime reaction recording from Will on Wednesday night. Oh no, sorry. That wasn't a recording. Night. That was actually Will now. That is how Will spends his days, my co-host, Mr. Trinity himself. Just Ings. Whenever it comes to mind, you know, it makes things very awkward in his day job with the Ings, or the Ingspiration, as Will likes to call it. But speaking of Ingspiration, you can find all of that on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we keep you up to date with Danny Ings news, and other players are available as well. Previews, reviews, polls. There'll be a poll or two, no doubt, live on the Twitter page right now in terms of transfers, team selection, all sorts of the good stuff. You get on there on our Twitter page. But if you want the visual delights of myself and Mr. Trinity, you can check out our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, whereby all of our previous episodes are there for your viewing pleasure. Or if you just like the audio rendition, then our providers are there ready and waiting for you on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and also on FanHub we lurk. But speaking of lurking, we will jump out of the shadows and straight into the review of Wednesday night, the game at Villa Park, where if you got to the game, congratulations, with the train strike on, you were rewarded, maybe is rewarded the right word, with a local derby with Wolverhampton Wanderers, which ended Aston Villa 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 1. Is it as simple to say, Will, that this was the classic game of two halves?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that analogy. Like you, when we discussed before, I didn't get down to the game either. I didn't even get to listen to the first half on the radio, really. I got to listen to a little bit when I was driving along, just as I'm doing now. So just as a heads up, if it all cuts out, you know why that is. It's happened before, probably will again. Second half, though, listening to that, it seemed that the positive substitution, bringing on Philip Coutinho, who seems to be trusted a little bit more by Unai Emery, and he's up to a magical Mark Barber touch, made an impact, as did the other substitutions. You know, listening to it as you did, when I heard that Augustinson had come on for Luke Dean, I scratched my head with one hand while still steering with the other.
Yep. But
it sounds like even he had a massive impact, had that one effort blocked on the line, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of Luca Din, I think as soon as he volleyed an attempted cross into the back row, the Holt end, I think that was kind of the cue to bring the lesser seen Augustinson onto the field. And he did make a positive impact, to be fair, as you mentioned, in terms of some of the other substitutions that were made as well. Coutinho, there had been speculation, shall we say, in terms of his future, and he did release a statement a few days previously addressing the rumours about him leaving, saying he hasn't asked to leave, you know, he's committed to staying. Whether, you know, in terms of, I think the primary motivation is to counter any accusation that he didn't want to really put any effort in or didn't want to be there anymore, and that I think it was to just confirm he will play when he's asked, for as long as he's asked to play, and what may happen in terms of the background will work itself out. But another, as you say, get some more minutes, the whole of the second half, and the reaction in the second half. I mean, it couldn't have been any worse than the first half, really. I mean, in terms of, we mentioned it on the preview show that this was the first game for Emery whereby the expectation would be on Villa to attack and to take the game to the opposition. And we did raise a question as regards whether the way we'd set up and played in the previous games was likely to be the optimum way to attack Wolves. And the first half, the answer was very much no, really, in terms of, I don't think we quite knew what we were doing in terms of having to go after the game, especially after the early goal from Wolves, which, to be fair, you know, it was a good finish. Won't take that away from him. But I think the proverbial rocket was put up the players at half time. And the second half, I mean, it was better, as I said, it couldn't have been any worse. I mean, I don't think it was exactly a vintage performance, but on the positive side, we got a point from a losing position. It was a situation whereby we didn't get done on the counter again by Wolves. And we'll come on to the ending of the game in a while. But we've talked about substitutions, and you ever so subtly alluded to it at the start of the episodes. Start of this episode, one of the subs was Danny Ings, who came on midway through the second half. And I think it's fair to say, with a little help from the goalkeeper from Wolves, Sarr, after we'd said how brilliant he was in the preview, took his chance, I think is fair to say, in terms of a typical Danny Ings finish. So we'll come on to potential team news and our views for the Stevenage game a little later on. But two opposing thoughts, really, you can have with Danny Ings. You know, the record, you know, on paper in terms of is five goals in the last 7 games. And you look in terms of goals per minute is top 5 in the league, I think, after Wednesday night's game. So I anticipate I know which side of the fence you're going to be on this question, but I will put both sides of this debate forward. Is the fact that when Danny Ings comes off the bench, and he's started a few games as well, is the fact that he comes off the bench and scores, is that reason to start him? Or is the fact that, you know, you have an option who can come off the bench, get up to speed with the game relatively quickly and take a chance away, put a chance away when it arises, is that vindication of leaving him on the bench specifically for the super sub role?
Well, I've looked at some other stats as well in regards to Danny Ings, and you see that he's got 7 goals this season for us. He's our top scorer, as you mentioned there. But 6 of his goals have come during his 8 starts this season. So for me, I'll be completely honest, as much as I absolutely love and adore Danny Ings, and I don't think that's a secret anywhere, you know, not like the Colonel's secret recipe and whatnot. It's one of those where Danny Ings just does not do very well when he comes off the bench for the Villa. He's much better when he's starting for us, in my opinion, as per the 6 goals in the 8 games. And okay, 4 of those goals came in 2 games, when they played against Brentford at home and when they played against Brighton away. But I think he's proving again and again that if he gets the opportunities in and around the box, he'll take them or he'll get them on target. For me, he's much better suited to starting, but he needs a run of games. And if you were to give him these next few games until the end of January, the 3 games that we've got coming up, we've Stevenage, Leeds, and then Southampton, isn't it, away?
Yep.
He gets 2 or 3 goals there. I mean, well, he probably gets more actually, and that in itself just justifies him starting. it was great to see as well that Unai Emery came out and said that the rumours about offering Danny Ings elsewhere are not true. We want to keep him as part of the squad. He's a valuable player for the squad, which sort of shows that they would prefer to bring in somebody a bit more prolific than him, if you can get more prolific than one of the top 5 minutes per goal scorers in the league. For me, I'll keep him in the team. I've got him in the team up front with Ollie Watkins, because I will say this, I know we've had our faux pas before calling him Wally Hopkins, and the rest of the Holt have called him that as well. And we've mentioned before he doesn't get enough goals, but he's got 4 goal contributions in 5 games under Unai Emery. He's a massive part of the mentality that we've got to win, and that high work ethic. And I personally feel, as I said before, you put Danny Ings on the pitch, you get him just to stay up top, put the pressure on where he needs to. He can stand offside most of the time, providing they're not looking for him. Get Buendia, Coutinho, Bailey, Jacob Ramsey, Watkins, whoever it is, pushing forward, doing all the hard work, and then just have him arriving into the box just to put the ball away into the back of the net. You know, in the same style as, and I'm not comparing them because they are different strikers, really, but the same style as a Michael Owen. Michael Owen would have games where he'd do nothing all game and he'd pop up and get a goal. And he got into the team because he would pop up and get a goal for you. It's very much the same with Danny Ings. And Danny Ings has also got that creativity in regards to assists as well. We saw that a couple of times last year. And you look at that through ball that he played for Leon Bailey at the end of the match, absolutely fantastic. And if Bailey had scored, he would have got the plaudits as, you know, correct, he should do. But I've seen quite a few tweets as well about that through ball and how magnificent it was, as was Tyrone Mings' through ball to Danny Ings against Wolves. What a great searching pass from Tyrone Mings. You wonder where all the Twitter hate's gone for him, because he's been playing brilliantly recently. Funny that, though. What about you? What do you think? Do you think Ings is a starter at the moment with the current players we've got? I mean, Archer's obviously gone out on loan to Middlesbrough, and I said on the last episode that would be the team that I'd want him to join in the Championship on loan, Middlesbrough, because they're playing fantastically under Michael Carrick. They've got a renaissance and they've got a very good style of play. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a push for the promotion spots, whether that's the playoffs or whatnot. But we are lacking a striker still. If you don't include, well, even if you include Leon Bailey, we're lacking a striker still. And I personally feel that that's a position that he's going to try and strengthen. But whether he does or doesn't, does Ings start for you, or is he a sub?
Well, I mean, in terms of, you've just really highlighted the current, I suppose, I don't know if problem's the right word, or you could say it's problem. In terms of strikers we have at the club at the moment, it's Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings, really, isn't it? You know, in terms of Archer's gone off on loan. Bailey has been playing up front, and we'll come on to him in a moment. But you would hope that whether it is in January or in the summer at the latest, that Emery is looking for another striker. I mean, I think it's something that has been needed. I think in the summer, ideally, I think we were saying that we needed another striker. I think that's certainly the case. Now, as you mentioned, Archer's off on loan. They're in the playoff spots at the time of recording, I believe, Middlesbrough. So I think that's a useful experience, been in that type of pressure situation where for Middlesbrough, been in the Premier League, for a consistent period of time during, the Premier League era. So the expectation from the fan base is for them to get promoted. So I think that's a useful step in his learning for Archer to go. But yeah, that does just leave Archer. Well, now Archer's left, that just leaves Watkins, Ings and Bailey. And if you're playing 2 up front, then I think the point you mentioned in respect of the league games coming up, Leeds and Southampton, is important for whether you play Ings, because for those 2 games, I mean, Southampton are rock bottom of the league at time of recording. Leeds are struggling as well. So in that vein of you need Danny Ings to play a few games in order to get his confidence up, in order to, get into form to score. It's a pretty good choice of 2 games. I mean, we'll come on to Stevenage in a bit in respect of whether you would play Danny Ings there as well. But for the league games, Leeds and Southampton, I'd agree with you. I would play Ings and Watkins. I would hope we're looking to bring another striker in. Realistically, I think every man and his dog looks for a striker in January, so it may be summertime whereby we bring somebody in. But yeah, I mean, that's, we've got 2 players. It's a good run of games to try and get them up to speed. Whether you would maybe think about kind of the Watkins-Bailey partnership against, a game away at Spurs, for example, in respect of where you're expecting to have less of the ball and, maybe playing on the counter, a bit of pace maybe required. Maybe you would go back to Ings. Maybe you would go back to Watkins and Bailey for those particular games. But speaking of Bailey, you mentioned in terms of the through ball that never was for Danny Ings, denied the assist by Bailey's last minute miss. The reaction, we will say the reaction of Bailey meant that he knew how big a chance it was, and where it was in the game in terms of it. It would have been the winner in terms of that scenario. We've stated that perhaps we would play Ings and Watkins up front for those next 2 league games at least. We'll come on to Stevenage in a bit. Would you play Bailey on the wing for those 2 games? Or, we mentioned in terms of Coutinho has been getting a few more minutes under his belt during the last couple of games. Do you put somebody like Coutinho on the wing? Do you bring him into the team, or Bundir on the wing? How do you deal with a problem like Bailey?
Well, it's a good question. It's a fair question to ask. For me, Bailey has to play. He's been doing very well. Okay, his form over the last maybe 1 or 2 games hasn't been as electric as it had been. But everybody's allowed a little bit of a dip in form, especially when you haven't played too much yourself during the season and a bit, For me, I would have Leon Bailey on the wing, and partnering him on the other wing would be one of 3 players at the moment. You can't forget John McGinn. John McGinn, you might have forgotten John McGinn, but John McGinn has been incredible, is the word that I would use to describe him over the last few games. I really feel like he's coming back to life. He's that attacking John McGinn. He's got that little bit of freedom. So you can't rule him out. And then you've got Buendia and Coutinho. Whilst Buendia's maybe trailed off a little bit as well, Coutinho's starting to come to the forefront with his fitness, with his declaration of loyalty to Aston Villa as well. So for me, it's one of those 3. I think what I'd do is and we'll get on to Stevenage in a bit, as you say, but as a bit of a spoiler alert, I'd be giving Coutinho to start against them. And if he can have enough of an impact, then play him against Leeds. He loves playing against Leeds. Remember last season? The only other player as well, actually, I forgot about him because of his injury recently, is Jacob Ramsey, who put in a magnificent shift against Manchester United when Unai won his opening game. So yeah, it's a nice quandary to have, but Bailey definitely gets into the team as well. And it's nice that if these players aren't performing, we've got other players who can come in and step up. I don't think we'll see Matty Cash out on the wing again anytime soon. And I've seen on Twitter that there's a few fans that don't feel we'll see Matty Cash in a Villa shirt come the end of the season or start of next season, which surprises me really, because Ashley Young won't go on forever. But yeah, Bailey on the wing. Now, in regards to Leon Bailey, though, there was a lot of negativity around him and his miss on Twitter. I'm interested in getting your opinion on the Leon Bailey miss. So there was a lot of negativity. We put out there that it seemed to be a difficult chance. He tried to control the first when the ball was quite high with an out-rushing goalkeeper. He's hit it with his weaker foot, and appreciate that if you're paying £100,000 a week, you should be able to strike a ball with your weaker foot. But for me, even if he'd got that on target, I think there were too many Wolves players getting back. There were 3, if I remember correctly. And I feel that the ball would have been cleared off the line. And that may have made things better for some fans because the shot would have been on target rather than going wide. I feel that the only way that he'd have put that in is if he'd have controlled it a bit sooner and put his laces through it. But even then, it was a difficult chance, in my opinion. But the question, or one of the questions I've been posed, or a statement that was said to me, is that a Sunday League footballer would be putting those chances away. Would they? Would you expect a Sunday League footballer to put that chance away, or do you think that it was a difficult chance for Leon Bailey to score in the last minute of a local derby?
I suppose it depends how good your Sunday League team is in terms of whether you would expect them to put it away. But I take your point in terms of the fact that it didn't go on target. I mean, this isn't, kind of a outrageous statement, but if you don't get it on target, it looks worse. So I think that I think the fact it was scuffed, yeah, and it was scuffed, kind of noticeably, it was not hit the way that it's not controversial to say it wasn't hit the way he would have expected. Do I think in terms of if he would have got the connection he was hoping for and on target, it would have gone in, in terms of that. But yeah, I agree with you that there was a bit more to be done than what you would have perhaps if you were listening to it on the radio. It sounded though he was 2 yards out and he's kind of fallen over and just kind of completely missed it from that yard. It wasn't as simple as that, as it kind of sounded on radio. So I agree with you there. You would expect in terms of a striker to score. Then you're into the question of whether he is a striker or not, and whether in a situation whereby, or put it another way, if Danny Ings had that chance in that position, I suspect you would have expected him to score. And that's in terms of we play Bailey up front with Watkins for the pace, and also that bit of trickery to befuddle kind of opposition defenders where you're not expecting too many chances to be created in those type of games. Whether you, in a game, as we mentioned, you expect to win where you're expecting to be on the front foot, whether you do get the finisher kind of on there. Yeah, I mean, that's the case for the prosecution in terms of why you'd have kind of Ings and Watkins up front. It wasn't a good attempt, but in terms of I think that means we should lose all hope on Leon Bailey and flog him to the dog and duck in exchange for their striker, who's obviously much better. No, I don't. But in terms of the games we've got coming up at the moment in the league, maybe you do put him on the wing because maybe we're not having to be quite as defensively minded, and maybe we can afford somebody a bit more attacking on the wing. But yeah, I mean, it's not the worst miss I've ever seen. Yeah, I think that's as far as I can go in terms of positivity. You'd expect you expect them to score. But yeah, if strikers in the Sunday League are banging them out, then we should be getting our scouts to go and watch the local leagues, see if we can find another gem, kind of to get into our reserve team. But we've mentioned a few times in terms of the Stevenage game, and that will come on to it. We're going to come on to it now because I think it links in nicely to a few of the points we've made in terms of some of the players and what team do you play on Sunday. So as we were talking about Leon Bailey, we'll start with Leon Bailey. Would you play him on Sunday in anticipation of hoping get some confidence up, good performance, maybe an assist or a goal, depending on where he plays. Do you throw him back out there straight away just to try and exercise some demons, or do you take him out the firing line?
I would be, and this is throwing up a little bit of debate on Twitter as well. I would be starting with as strong a team as possible, and that doesn't mean to say my strongest team, but a stronger team as possible. And at the moment, I wouldn't have Buendia and Coutinho in together on the wings. Ramsey's coming back from injury, so he'd be a substitute at best for me. John McGinn, we're not sure the extent of his hamstring injury. Hopefully, it isn't a long-term thing. So, by default, really, that leaves you with Leon Bailey. And I'd start him anyway. He'd be one of the first names on my team sheet. And he'd be there, out on the wing, being told to cut inside and being told to cause havoc. And if he can get to 50 minutes, 60 minutes, 70 minutes, with his confidence high, with getting a goal or creating chances, and we can then afford to substitute him and bring on Caden Young, for example, or a returning Jacob Ramsey, then brilliant. That's job done, in my opinion, in regards to him. Stevenage are flying high, obviously, 51 points in League Two and second in the table at the moment. So I think we need to give them a bit of respect. And on top of that, I want to see the Villa have a good cup run. I want to see us win the cup. We haven't got Man United in the third round for the first time since the dinosaurs walked the earth. So why not go strong? Why not send a message to everybody that we're Aston Villa, we've got a cup manager, and we're here to get our name back on that trophy and lift it for a sixth time.
I think it'd be eighth time. FA Cup.
Time.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah, I'm thinking the League Cup. Do you know what? They give us the League Cup as well. So there you go.
So we did get Man United in the third round of the League Cup, so kind of that tradition continued just in a different competition. But I suppose the way to look at it in terms of, a statement of do you play a strong team or not is in terms of there was first choice 11 who played against Wolves on Wednesday. You mentioned McGinn was injured, which meant Cash came in. But apart from that change, you would say that the remaining 10 players were Emre's first choice currently. Mentioned Ramsey injured. Maybe you would expect would play if he's fit. So you look from my perspective in terms of who was on the bench, in terms of do you play a weakened team or get some experience. So I'll run the gauntlet in terms of the players who were on the bench against Wolves on Wednesday. And yes or no, we'll get the team together based on yes or no, would you play them in the game against Stevenage on Sunday? So I think I'm going to go in alphabetical order, I think this is. But Augustinson?
No. And the reason for that is, again, you start your strongest team. However, the only way that Luke Dean doesn't play, and it would be a miracle, is if John Percy is right, and in the next 16 minutes we sign Alex Moreno from Real Betis, which I think will come a bit too soon. But no, he doesn't start for me.
Bednarak?
No.
Chambers?
No.
Coutinho?
Yes.
Dendoncker?
That's the hardest one. But if you push me for a yes or no, then a no.
I think I won't need to push you very hard for this one. Danny Ings?
Yes.
Robin Olsen?
That's another hard one. But no, he doesn't.
Morgan Sanson?
No.
Caden Young? Apparently, no. He's still there. Caden Young?
No.
See, no. I mean, I think I'd say as has been demonstrated by the debate on Twitter that you mentioned in terms of our lineup, I would go a slightly different direction to you, and I probably would play the majority of players who we're on the bench against Wolves on Wednesday. I would play Augustinsson. So I mean, if we do sign Moreno, I think our new work permit requirements means he may struggle to be registered for Sunday's game in any event. I'm happy to be corrected on that. Don't correct me on that. Chambers I'd play in terms of, I think he needs some minutes. I did think about Bednarak as well, but I think the fact that Bednarak's on loan and realistically speaking, we're not going to keep him after the summer means I'm not too fussed about giving him some minutes. Coutinho.
Where do you play Chambers? Do you put Chambers at centre back or in that defensive midfield role?
Good question. I mean, I would play Chambers at centre back, and I would put Dendoncker in defensive mid. Personally, so in terms of in that centre back role, do I play Konza or Mings? I'd probably play Konza, to be honest. I'd give Mings a bit of a rest. Then Coutinho, in terms of would I play him? Yeah, I mean if it is true, and we're not going to know this, that there's no intention of selling Coutinho, and that we're going to look to try and integrate him back into the team in the second half of the season, I would play him in this game because this seems like a good game to start. I'd play him instead of Bundia, to be honest, just to try and get him some minutes. Yeah. Then Donker, I'd play him. I mean, in terms of, I would play him in the defensive midfield role. Kamara, I mean, he's been playing very well since he's been back in the team, but we have to be conscious of the fact he was injured for a little while before the World Cup, so manage his minutes. In terms of, does that mean I'd play Dougie Luiz or Sanson? I'd probably play Luiz, to be honest. I mean, in terms of, I know Sanson needs the minutes, but it doesn't seem like Sanson is in the long-term plans of the club. So I play Luiz in there. I mean, possibly in terms of looking at my team, I'd think about making him captain, just as the senior player. Danny Ings I'd play similarly to you, just to try and get some momentum, get some more goals in those legs. Caden Young, would I play him? I thought you kind of tossed and turned on this one. On balance, I would agree with you. I'd bring him off the bench, kind of give him at least 30 minutes at least, just to get him running at Stevenage. Hopefully, if it goes to plan, we're a goal up at least by then, so Young can, run at a tiring Stevenage defence. A home game, crowd's going to be behind him, get some confidence that way. So, yeah, I'd leave him for the bench, I think. And then in terms of Bailey, I probably would play him as, try and get some, as I said, get him back on the horse, get some confidence, play him up front with Ings. They can replicate their interplay in terms of creating chances. So you got in terms of Luiz, Ings, Bailey, Konza, at least 4 Coutinho. So it's not like playing the kids, but it'd be interesting to see in terms of, you mentioned earlier Matty Cash, in terms of potentially, I think it's inevitable if somebody doesn't play for a few games, the thought always goes to, they're going to be off. I mean, if he's not playing, I mean, you mentioned in terms of Young isn't probably going to be first choice for too much longer, kind of moving like next season. You look at it maybe from a Cash perspective, it's like, I can't get in the team beyond somebody who's not long term. Maybe the manager doesn't rate him. You don't know at this stage. I think it's a bit too early to say. But if Cash plays right back on Sunday, that'd be an interesting process in terms of thinking, is he the backup right back in Emre's mind? That's why he's playing. I mean, I think that would depend on the rest of the team, obviously, but I think it's certainly one to keep an eye on, because I think it does raise an eyebrow in terms of his omission from the team, whereby, you'd probably say he's one of the few bright sparks of the previous calendar year in terms of Villa form. But I'd say even with what you may call a few reserve players, I'm going to jump forward into prediction time and what we think will happen on Sunday. You would expect Villa to win this game, wouldn't you? At least, in terms of if ever there was a time to be positive, Will, this is it against Stevenage, isn't
I mean, really quickly, my team could have Debu in goal. I'd have Constance Mings in. I'd have Louise and Kamara. I'd have Bailey Coutinho. I'd have Watkins in. So very strong message, and that will reflect my score prediction as well. However, on the bench, I'd have quite a few youngsters. I'd have Feeney. I'd have Bogard. I'd have Caden Young, and the other youngster I'd put on the bench, who is about to sign his first professional contract when he turns 17, is Rory Wilson. Because
Okay.
Rory Wilson's banged in 17 goals so far this season. So why not put him on the bench and bring him on at some point against Stevenage, especially if we're going to win. And spoiler alert, I'm going to be positive.
Shock horror.
So for me, Baz, I think Stevenage will get a goal. I just feel like we're going to concede quite a bit of the time at the moment. I feel that they will get a goal, and it'll be a header from a corner or a counter attack. But I also think that there's going to be a glut of goals for the Villa, and that's no disrespect to Stevenage, but I think it's going to come under Emery, and with Danny and Ollie up front, with Bailey behind them, and little Phil pulling the strings. I think we're going to hit 5. So I'm going to go 5-1 Villa. Danny Ings is going to get a couple, and the other 3 are going to be shared around the team. And I wouldn't be surprised if they came on, if one of Caden Young or Rory Wilson got the 5th goal for us, just to round it off and make it a lovely Sunday at Villa Park.
Yeah, I mean, always a nice scenario whereby young players come on and take their chance, well, from a striker perspective, by getting a goal. I mean, I think in terms of, again, as you mentioned, your score predictions based on picking a strong or the strongest team. I think we'll kind of go half and half. I think Villa will win. I mean, that's not exactly cutting edge punditry in terms of Stevenage, as you mentioned, doing very well in League 2 currently, but there is a 3-division gap between the teams, so expecting the Premier League team at home to win is not particularly outlandish in terms of predictions. Where I will go positive is I think we'll keep a clean sheet. I want to go for that. We will keep a clean sheet. And in terms of our goals, I'm toying between 2-0 or 3-0 because I think Stevenage, especially first half, are going to be very well organised defensively. And I think in terms of as the game will go on, especially with some younger players, if we're bringing off the bench, a bit more energy in the second half, I think that will get us over the line. I'm going to go for 3-0 is my prediction. I toyed between 2 and 3, but your positivity is catching. So 3-0 Villa is going to be my prediction. And hopefully we get a nice draw in the 4th round without wishing to tempt that fate. And we'll be able to avoid Man United. I mean, ideally we'll avoid them because hopefully Everton can shock them this evening. We are recording on Friday afternoon before the first of the 3rd round games has been completed. So that dream may completely have been shattered by the time you listen to this podcast. But speaking of dreams that are not shattered, you will always get everything you dreamed of and more on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we will be, no doubt, canvassing your views in terms of the team that we should be playing on Sunday. And if any transfers are confirmed before Sunday, we will be breaking the news of who, what, where, how much on our Twitter page, along with all the other Villa news, shenanigans, incomings, outgoings, rumours, opinions, diatribes, absolutely everything going on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity. You can catch up on our previous visual episodes on our YouTube channel, Talk to Trinity. Audio-wise, you can continue to check us out on our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We are also on FanHub. But before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity himself for his final thoughts, thank you very much for listening, engaging, liking, subscribing, retweeting, all the things you've been doing in respect to the show and the channel. Really appreciate it. And a positive note from me, which may come as a bit of a shock. We are still unbeaten in 2023.
Well, that's made me lost for words. Your positivity. Cheers, Char. Thank you very much for listening, for watching. And as with David and Goliath, as with Aston Villa wins and Baz predictions, we're certain of a giant killing now, or so you'd think. But the one question on everybody's lips is who's going to be in, who's going to be out, who's going to be shaking it all about. And we're hoping it'll all be okie dokie, okay, come the final whistle on Sunday, and that we find ourselves in the hat for the next round. And if we do get United, it's the fourth round. So surely we've got a chance of beating them. Baz assures me that he's Villa till he dies, despite his positivity and setting us up for a fall. I'm Villa till I die. Maybe a little bit more Danny Ings these days than Villa, to be completely honest with you. But cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Enjoy the game. If you see me, say hello. Up the Villa.